Hey chicks, let's chat. So listen, this is a topic I've been wanting to cover for a little bit, but it just takes the right mood or mindset to cover it. If you are blessed to have a family that nobody is struggling with addictions, then just know that it's a blessing, right? Um, but it's few, if any, families that I know that nobody has any type of addiction, meaning nobody smokes weed every single day. Nobody is an alcoholic, or nobody gets on coke, or nobody smokes dope, nobody pops pills, nobody overeats, because that's an addiction too. So almost nobody gambles. Like, it's so many different types of addictions that every family pretty much is dealing with in some way, shape, or form, right? The addiction I'm mostly going to talk about today, though, is a drug addiction. Growing up and having people in your family who are addicted to drugs, and the impact that has on you as a person, right? So first and foremost, I believe that because I grew up around people who were, had habits that maybe later turned to addictions, or addictions that appeared as just a habit, but really it was an addiction. Because I grew up in that, I always was mindful of the things that I partake in, right? Because I knew that wasn't anything I wanted to get into. I was paying attention when Dara was at your school saying, I remember being in elementary school, and the Dara was telling us all about drugs and, what they look like, and, just say no, and this, that, or the third. And in my mind, I couldn't help but thinking, like, probably right now under the bed at our house is a little plate, a little circle plate, because I seen it under that bed, and they got some white stuff on that plate. I'm pretty sure that's drugs, but because my mama had raised me under the guise of, don't talk about what goes on in the house, don't repeat that, I dare not to raise my hand and say, oh, my mama, my parents, or whatever, they use drugs. I dare not to do that. That was like probably the beginning of me noticing that, hey, some stuff going on even in my house that I don't think this is supposed to be going on. So, and that, like I said, that was from a young time in my life. So I was always like a nosy kid, so I always was trying to see something, always trying to pay attention to everything, and I did. So when my mama and daddy had card parties, because at that time I was like the only child, but they would have card parties. Everybody, they playing spades, they playing Luther Vandross, Michael Jackson. They slamming the cards on our table, and they got a little saucer, a little green saucer that got a little substance in it. And every now and then you see it passed around. Every now and then you might catch a little straw, a little mini straw about this big. You see that on the plate, you see it going around. You don't have a clue of really what's going on. These jokers is, as they party is what they doing, having a good old time. I had young parents, my parents had me when they were 17, right before they graduated high school. So by this time in their life, my dad done came from the military, and they probably in their early 20s, 24, 25. They, just living, partying, doing what young people do, experimenting, this, that, or the third, But it was something in me that knew that what they had going on, right? Because, this type of stuff never transpired at my grandmother's house or in front of her. Y'all wasn't doing nothing. So you kind of know, hey, y'all don't do this in front of everybody. And it's hidden away. And it's not even talked about. So it's something about what y'all got going on that I know ain't right, even at my young age, right? So then, boom, we going through life later. You know, I'm getting older. Some things that's transpiring. Parents end up getting divorced. You know, my mom, she gets meaner, right? It's like something about her attitude is just always, she always at me. She's always angry. She's always, you know, but when she with her friends and they doing their thing, it's like, that's her safe space. You know what I'm saying? Like, she ain't angry or mean at them, you know. So this is around the time when the habit turns into an addiction, right? And maybe it had been an addiction, and you know, who knows? I don't know. But for sure, around the time of their divorce is when it turns bad for my mom. My dad, he stops the habits or whatever. I don't know that it was ever an addiction for him. It maybe was just a habit, partying, hanging young, doing this, doing that. My mom, it transcended. You know, it went beyond the partying, we just hanging, it went beyond that into addiction for her, right? And that was the downhill spiral for her, you know. And when I look back at it, I feel like, you know, the habit became an addiction because she started dealing with her feelings, her emotion, her marriage that had failed. You know, her relationship with her kids weren't good. She ended up losing a job or getting laid off from a job she had been on, you know, all her life. I think once those things started happening, that she just started to lean on her addiction more, right? Now, of course, as I'm young and I'm in the midst of it, I'm experiencing the bad attitudes, the anger, this. I'm not giving her any passes. I'm not mature or wise enough to think about what's going on with her, what could be causing her to act like this. You know, I don't know what's causing her to act like this. I just know I can't really deal with it. Me and her relationship is suffering, you know. But once I, you know, got old enough to start considering what could have been going on with her, and truth be told, that didn't happen to years and years later. You know, the drugs and it not only took a toll on her, but it took a toll on our relationship. You know, and it's a lot of women right now in the same shoes that I'm in, and you have issues with your mom, or you and your mom had issues. Y'all not as close. Y'all don't have a good relationship. Y'all might not even like each other because of the addictions that mom had, right? And it take a lot to get past that, because what the person with the addiction, they don't understand the toll that took on you. You know, even when they get beyond their addiction, it's like sometimes they just use it. You may feel like they're just using it as an excuse. Well, I was in my addiction then. And in your mind, you saying, I don't care nothing about that addiction. Like, I needed you and you wasn't there. You know, and you start feeling like sometimes they just using that as an excuse. But when you really get to a certain place in life, you realize that no, they're not using it as an excuse. They really was in a situation that was beyond them, you know. And if they didn't just muster up the willpower to change, and if God didn't just allow the change to happen, put it in their heart or their mind for them to change, then there never would be a change, you know. Because there are some people in some situations that once you are knee deep in that addiction, it's hard for you to come out. And some people never come out, right? So by this time, going back, you know, like I said, I'm in middle school, our relationship was garbage, you know. Then I have a brother. My mom has a kid. So I was like, that was like the best gift, you know. Um, but her habit is so bad at this point that she has progressed. She's no longer just, you know, smoking weed or getting on coke or whatever. She has progressed to smoking dope. And by dope, I don't mean marijuana. I mean, you know, the hard stuff, cocaine. And by smoking, I mean, like, you know, she either put it in a cigarette, so, because she always smoked cigarettes. She either put it in a cigarettes or she's, you know, however they smoke it, pipes, cans, whatever. But at this point, this is what she's doing. So when I have a brother who is born, who has cocaine in his system. And my grandmother has to get custody of him because she can't have custody of him, right? So, and she was high when she went into labor with him, to the point of, like, it's kind of like a little joke that my brother always been crazy about cars, right? Why? Because he was born in a car. She was so high, like, when she went into labor, like, she wasn't able to, you know, I guess, calculate the contractions or whatever. So she ended up having my brother on the floor of my auntie car at the hospital because they couldn't make it in. So yeah. And ever since then, like, he just had a thing for cars. Like, did he have cocaine in the system? Yes. But did he, you know, have, like, the addiction or the withdrawals or whatever? Well, I was young, so I don't remember any of that, you know. He fully functioning, you know, and a regular citizen. But as he got older, and even as a grown person, you can tell that, you know, him being born under the influence had an influence on him, right? You can tell that. If I'm honest, if my family is honest, you can tell that, right? So I feel like we always give him a little extra grace. I give him a little extra grace till I run out of patience with you. Now I don't care nothing about what you was born with. You joker, you better tighten up, you know. But I do give him an extra little grace just because some things I understand are not his fault. And some things don't show up. They don't necessarily manifest until later on, you know. And you wonder, why this person like this? Well, you don't know that even when you're dealing with men and stuff like that, you don't know why that joker like that. You don't really know that he was born on drugs. He was born with drugs in his system. You don't know that about him. You know what I'm saying? And you trying to figure out and think it's you. No. But anyway, so boom, we have this situation where he's born. He's like everybody's favorite. He was a great kid. You would think that would have changed my mom's behavior because she always said she wanted a boy. She got her boy. That didn't change. You know, continued on. So it affected me because I'm embarrassed about it. I'm embarrassed the way you look. I'm embarrassed the way you carry yourself. I'm embarrassed that you're asking my friends for money. I'm embarrassed about everything because I know where you came from. You know, I know how you looked before. And to see you now, like I remember going through a stage where I wouldn't even tell nobody that's my mama. If you ain't know that was my mama, you wouldn't get introduced to her. It just was a hard time for me because I couldn't believe that she had let herself go in that way. I would look at her, I couldn't even believe that was my mama, you know. And so with me living with my dad, of course, that was kind of taboo because it's like, girl, at that time, not many girls live with their dad, you know. But I did. You know, that was my choice. Me and my mom weren't getting along, so of course I'd rather stay living with my dad when they divorced, and that's what I did. So as I'm getting older, it's like her habit is still just terrible. It's embarrassing. We don't get along. We at each other's throats. I feel like she mean. I feel like she antagonizing me. Like she provokes me, you know. And I feel like that's what people couldn't understand. And a lot of times when it's kids and parents, all of the adults, they look at it as if you're disrespectful. You're the person disrespectful because that's your mom. And they don't understand that you don't see what this lady or this person does to me. They antagonize me. They say things about me. They get on the phone, tell all their friends, all kind of stuff. And not that some of the stuff don't be true, but you had provoked that in me because I really was trying to stay away from you and not deal with you. But because me doing that hurt your feelings, then you would do something to make me have to interact with you, even if the interaction was negative. So people wasn't understanding it, and I couldn't articulate that, you know. So a lot of times I just came off as the bad, disrespectful person, you know. And it was, like I used to really be dealing with, like, you know, because, you know, I'm going to church all the time, and it's still on me, like, you know, honor your mother and your father, that your days will be long, you know. And that, I always used to wrestle with that because I knew that I had this issue with my mom, you know. And I remember, like, later in life, I would talk to my godmom about it, and I would be like, my mama just used to be so mean to me, and I didn't understand it. And she was like, that was the drugs. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah. She said, that's what it was. It was the drugs that had her, you know, flipping out and, you know, acting like that. And I didn't know. I just thought, like, you just didn't like me, you know. And then that was a portion of it, because as the years went by, and by the time my mom did start getting cleaned up, we would have conversations, and that was something that I always, you know, would say, is that, you know, you was mean. And even to the point where I didn't even want to have kids because I didn't want to be a mom like her. And I was like, I was scared that I would treat my kids in that way. And I was like, I don't want to have kids, you know. I don't want to have kids. You know, I already been helping with my siblings, and they get on my nerves sometimes. You know what I'm saying? So me having my own kids, I know they're going to get on my nerves. Then what if I act with my kids how my mom was with me? So that kid stuff didn't appeal to me. And so one day we had a conversation, and, you know, because as I got to college, once I got into college, I became very verbal. Because I was the type of kid that I basically held in a lot of stuff, because that's how my mom was. Like, if you said something back to her, that was considered being disrespectful. So I had to hold it in. But once my mom wasn't in the house no more, and then my dad was, he allowed us to express ourselves. So I could express myself with him, but then I still had to hold back a little bit with my mom. But by the time I got in college, and all we was doing was public speaking and this, that, or the third, listen, I learned I started talking. I'm talking about everything. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like, hey, I can stand whatever you're going to say. You know, so then I started really letting her know, like, hey, this is how you was treating me. This is how you was acting. I didn't like that. I didn't, you know. And it wasn't until years later when she finally said, she said that she was angry with me. You know, on top of her addiction, she was angry with me because when her and my dad got a divorce, I didn't want to live with her. And that hurt her. And that she didn't forgive me for that for a long time. So I was like, okay, that made sense. And then it made me understand why she was always aggravating me, you know, and antagonizing me. And I'm like, okay, because I knew it was something, but I didn't know what it was. But I just knew you don't do my sister like that, and you don't do my brother like that. You know what I'm saying? But I seemed like the disrespectful child because I'm always going toe to toe with you, right? But that's what it was. It was like I had hurt her with me choosing to live with my dad, but I told her, like, I couldn't, if I got a choice, there's no way I would have stayed with you because you was too mean, you know? And she understood that too when she said, you know, it wasn't her intention to be mean, but it was her intention to raise me right. So I respected it, you know, because her as a young mother, not necessarily having all of the right tools to her as a young mother, you know, not having all the right tools and having her own issues that she had to resolve. And now you got kids on top of that. And now you got a divorce on top of that. And now you got an addiction on top of that. It's no way you were going to be able to give me what I needed when I needed it. Right? And in the way that I needed it. She couldn't give any of her kids that because she couldn't show up for herself. That's why she was leaning on the addiction. And again, these are all things that I understand now, but I didn't want to hear that when I was younger. You couldn't tell me none of that. Because in my mind, this is your choice. You went out there and chose to get on that. You chose to be stuck on that. You chose to, and I had to, you know, really get deep in my profession and just, you know, gain wisdom, understanding, and realize that the first choice, it was your choice. When you decide, hey, I'm gonna experiment with this for the first time, and I'm going to, you know, I like this. I'm just gonna see what it do. The first couple times, it's your choice. But once you knee deep in your addiction, it's no longer your choice. It's bigger than you choosing it. It's choosing you. It has you, and that has to do with no matter what it is, no matter if it's the gambling, no matter if it's drugs, no matter if it's drinking. Anytime you get to the point where you have to do it, you have to have it, it's choosing you. You just think you choosing it, but it already has engulfed you. It already has engulfed you. Every day you wake up, you got to light up a blunt before you do anything, before you make any. You already addicted. You already addicted. You just think you choosing it. It is already encapsulated you. And that's not to say you can't come out of it, because you can, depending on what it is. But sometimes you're going to need help coming out of whatever it is. So eventually, my mom ends up, you know, being, having heart troubles, heart failure, right? Long-term drug use. She had stayed in and out of shelters. Just the life she chose, it took her down that path, and she ended up having health problems, those kind of health problems. And so she ends up being in a situation where she needs a heart. She has to be on a heart transplant. And now you can't have no drugs in your system. You can't have nothing going on. When them people give you a heart, you better not have now lick or nothing for them to give you a heart, because it ain't like, you know, it's easy for a heart to come by. You got to be a match for it. It's going to take time, you know. So by this time in her life, you know, she done got on a good foot. You know, she trying to live a saved life, you know. But it doesn't disconnect you from the repercussions of the life you did live. Because even though you sick now, and for her, it's like, okay, well, I'm sick now. Like, y'all should run to my aid. Y'all should help me. Y'all should. But the relationships that you have with your kids, all of them ain't intact. But you expecting us to drop everything and come see about you. And it's not that we didn't, But sometimes it was reluctantly because we felt like, hey, where was you when we needed you? You know what I'm saying? Because graduation, you ain't come. You know what I'm saying? And it was other times that I'm like, where was you? But now I'm supposed to run to take you up and down this road to Gainesville to Shands Hospital, and I'm supposed to be happy to do it. But I got to take off work to do it. Okay, well, you say, well, I'm going to give you gas money. That's besides the point. The point is you need me now, and I'm supposed to show up for you with a smile on my face. When all the years, from 5th grade on, sometimes you was missing in action. I didn't even know where you was. I might wasn't even asking you about where you was either. It was times I didn't ask. But what I was doing was I was always preparing for bad news. I always was preparing that, imagining and trying to put myself in the feeling of getting the news that your mom has passed, something has happened to your mom, because I just felt like it was going to happen. And I really did feel like it was going to happen in her addiction. So when it didn't happen in her addiction, I was like, thank God that wasn't what he had for her, right? But now, it had got to the point where now you got grandkids, sister got a son, brother got a daughter, and that's all she ever wanted was grandkids. She used to pressure me for them. But I wasn't interested in kids at that time, and in my mind, I was like, when I got pregnant in the 12th grade, because I did get pregnant in the 12th grade, I felt like I don't have a mom to help me. My dad is already, struggling with raising his kids by himself, me and my sister, and then I had another little sister. So even though my dad makes decent money, he makes decent money to keep us from being poor. You know what I'm saying? But if I add a kid to this situation, that's not going to be good. And then that means that my grandmama, my mama, I'm going to need all kinds of help. And I just don't see putting that burden on them when it seems like sometimes like it's already a burden because you got one key player who ain't able to play. You know what I'm saying? And of course, the dude was from the street. So, I didn't think for one second that I wasn't going to get the help I needed from him or his family, because I knew I would have. But I had my own dreams and plans, and I was going to college, and so I'm like, no, I don't have the help I need. And even though I probably will get, some money, this and that from him, I don't know how long that's going to last, because he probably going to end up in jail, and he did end up going to the feds. So I just didn't think that was the time, and I just told him I didn't even give him an opportunity to say I just told him this is what's happening and this is what I'm gonna do. Now will you have second thoughts and regrets or second guesses about that later on in life? Yeah, that's another video though. But at this time, and my dad, he didn't force nothing on me. He just was like, hey, you was making adult choices, so now you got to make some more adult choices, because I'm not going to tell you what to do about that. You got to do what you feel. So I did. If I had like two parents, would I probably made a different decision? Of course, probably. Chances are. But it just takes you back to the fact that a lot of times when people are knee deep in their addictions and their habits, they don't understand the impact that it has on you. For me, it gave me not having the bond with my mom. In fact, having such a disgruntled relationship with her, it made it hard for all the women in my life. You know what I'm saying? It made it, I was very standoffish when it came to girls, women, any type of relationships with women. And because I spent so much of my life standoffish, not want to deal with you, I have a friend or two, but I'm never going to be in a clique full of girls. Never. Even now, I'm not. You know what I'm saying? Now I just have different reasons not to be. You know what I'm saying? It's some females or some, like, other than a, hey, how you doing? You get to none of my time. Not worthy. No. You know what I'm saying? And like I say, it's for different reasons now. But coming up, the lack thereof of a relationship with my mom, it definitely made me have issues with other females and other women. You know, it gave me a distaste, you know. So then I only dealt with women on the level that I had to deal with them, when I wanted to deal with them, whoever I wanted to deal with, you know. So of course it made it hard for, you know, some of the women that may have been in my dad's life. The first lady he married, I didn't like her. Like, she had to really win me over. And once she did, I loved her to death. But I just wasn't accepting of women because the main woman in my life had let me down. And not just let me down, embarrassed me, hurt me, everything you could think of. So that's how everybody else looked to me, like y'all was gonna do the same thing. So before I let you do that, I'm gonna just give you 50 feet. I'm just gonna only deal with you when I have to, if I have to. And that was the main reason that once I got, you know, later in life, and I came about doing this podcast, that's the main reason I wanted to do something for women. Because I knew that ain't no in the world I'm the only woman who didn't like women, you know, or had a hard time with women, or, you know, just sometimes. So I wanted to do something that was the total opposite of how I had always felt. So that's how CHIC-CHAT came about, because I wanted to discuss things that women have went through. I wanted to discuss things that me and some of my closest friends, me and my homegirls, you know, talk about in our, you know, powwows. I wanted to bring those kind of conversations to the podcast. And so therefore I wanted to talk about real things. You know, true enough, I could tell you all kinds of stories, you know, and it would be stuff that you could laugh about. It would be stuff that you could, you know, cry about, etc., so forth. But I really wanted to get into the nuts and bolts of things, like real stuff, because it's a lot of women, and not only women. Once I got into my profession, I realized that, man, the dynamics of the relationship of daughter and mom, it is so tough. There are so many struggles there. And then I started looking back in my family, and I'm like, my grandmama and my mama had their struggles. My grandmama and her oldest daughter had their struggles. And I'm just like, what is it about the dynamics of the mom and daughter that can be so hard? You know, and if you're the type of person that you have a great mom and you have a great relationship with her, like, understand that you have something truly special, because that is definitely not how it is majority in the circles that I run, in the situations that I know about. It is a lot of struggle. You know, between the mom and the daughters, you know, and at least one of the daughters. If the mom got more than one daughter, one of them daughters she gonna struggle with, you know. And you know, it's not always about addiction, but if you came up in the 80s and 90s, shoot, even some of the kids coming up now, because there's so many drug addicted people. Like, I had a friend who, she just was on the internet. She was arrested by the local police people. So of course it's a Facebook page for that, you know. And her charge was meth. And my heart just went out to her kids instantly. Well, the one that she has left. It went out, and her friends and her family, because again, when you under these addictions, you don't understand the embarrassment that comes with it. You don't understand the anger sometimes that it conjures up in your kids or in your family members. You don't understand how, you know, these people been praying for you and they want you to do better. And even when they give you some money for something, it may be a light bill or rent or anything, but they hoping you don't go spend it on drugs. They hoping that you do the right thing with it. You don't understand what it causes with those addictions, you don't understand the ramifications that they have on your family. You just really don't. And I just want to say to anybody who don't walk in my shoes, you know I ain't lying. If you ever walk anywhere near my shoes and dealing with, maybe it wasn't crack cocaine that your parent was dealing with, but maybe it was alcohol. Ain't no way you got a parent who had an addiction to alcohol and they ain't never embarrassed you. They ain't never been. It just ain't. It ain't happened. You know what I'm saying? These addictions, they hurt. They hurt the people closest to you. They hurt the people around you. Even, you know, you may say, well, all I do is smoke, so ain't no way that's bothering my kids. But if every day your kid go to school and they backpack smelling like weed, and the kid saying, oh, what that is, and your kid gotta act like it ain't theirs. They go to school and they hair got smell like marijuana, and they got to act like, oh, the little girl say, oh, your hair stink, and she got to act like she don't know what it is. Like, some part of your addiction is affecting your kids. Some part of your addiction is affecting your families. It's affecting, you know, your friends, your situations. And I just say, like, sometimes you got to step outside of what you're doing and think about other people. Step outside of what it is that you want to do and think about how your life may be affecting other people. If your life is not affecting other people in a positive way, then it may be something that you're doing wrong. And that's not to say that everybody ain't going to get it right. Everybody ain't going to be angels in life. I ain't asking for none of that. I ain't saying that. But I'm just saying, if you have addictions and you know whether or not you have an addiction, get help for it. Because 9 times out of 10, it's affecting people in ways that you may never know. You know, you may not have a kid that's verbal like me and that don't mind coming to you telling you, hey, X, Y, and Z. You may have a kid that holds it in. You may have a kid that internalizes it and becomes depressed because of it. You may have a kid who ends up beating on their boyfriend or beating on their girlfriend because they have so much anger from what they experienced as a child or as an adolescent because of what their parents had going on. The point is, you never know how it truly is affecting your kids and your surroundings, even your job. You going to work, you thinking don't nobody smell it. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. You thinking nobody paying attention to you being high. Yes, they are. They know it. You not hiding nothing. Enjoy your evening.